Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Presence podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. She is big time, big dog, okay? She is Dr. Adaira Landry. She's an assistant professor of emergency medicine at the Harvard Medical School and a physician at Brigham Women's Hospital. Her academic interest focuses on mentorship of early career professionals. She's been awarded for her dedication to mentorship and education. She speaks nationally on mentor-mentee relationships and strategies for career development. She's also a healthcare contributor for Forbes. She's published in academic outlets like Nature, Science, New England Journal of Medicine, and Vogue, Teen Vogue, Harvard Business Review, and Fast Company. Right now, she's currently co-authoring a book for early career professionals to navigate the workplace. It's called Micro Skills, Small Actions, Big Impact with HarperCollins. She's also a wife and a mom to 3 beautiful children, and she really hopes to raise her 3 children to understand the value and importance of supporting others in need. Wow. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited to learn more about your story because you've got quite some accomplishments under your belt, and I would imagine it hasn't been easy. So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you have evolved over the years.
Yeah. So I think my journey starts like all of us, when we were young and influenced by those around us who loved us and who supported us. I grew up in an environment where my parents were very strict. They are still strict. And they prioritized education. And luckily for me, I wasn't really athletic. I wasn't the most popular person. So it just worked out in my favor that books were just there for me to devour. And so I loved reading and studying. And I think it was just something that felt in control for myself. And I actually did really well in school. And I ended up starting high school at 12 and getting accepted to UC Berkeley at 15, and, moving out to college. My parents were in Southern California, and I, moved to Northern California. I was, at the time I, actually matriculated, I was 16, and I moved out of my parents' house, and it was a huge shock. I went to a very, very conservative high school, so much that, my principal actually tried to convince my parents not to let me go to Berkeley. They thought it was just not aligned with their values. And so, that just sort of speaks to how tightly controlled that environment was and how widely open it was when I got to college. And that was like just a whole new world for me. I went to college, I was pre-med, and I'm in these classrooms now with 400, 500 people. And I remember having like 21-year-olds sitting next to me in some classes, and I was 16, and even in the dorms, my roommates were 19 years old. And it was just like, at that age, there's a big difference between a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old, especially a very conservative 16-year-old. But it was amazing from like a social standpoint. I think from a professional development standpoint, I was just like a dot in a huge ocean of many people who were either, very clearly strategic with their choices, or also like me. And they're like, I don't know what to do. I studied a lot in high school. People supported me, but I don't know what to do here. So I think college was this moment where I was like, I made a lot of mistakes in regards to studying and picking my course load. I did not even know about the concept of mentorship. I had no mentors. I didn't go to anyone directly for like my personal issues or my individual needs. Never. I never did that. Even in medical school. So I ended up going to UCLA for medical school. And even in medical school, it was just very challenging for me to like understand how to get a mentor. And I remember going to all of these workshops and seminars, and they would say something like, go out and find a mentor and go out and build your career. And but like I was like, how do you do that?
Right.
So I think for the early part of my career, I was waiting for someone to take me to the next level,
Mhm.
and like help me get grants, publish papers, give talks, and that actually never happened. No one was like, I need to go save Adaira. And I think that was probably one of the harder parts of my development, was that I realized that this is all on me. And of course, this isn't because people are bad. It's just people are busy and they have their own priority. So I don't fault them for that. When I was later in medical school, sort of transitioning between medical school and residency, that's when met my first, I would say, mentor, someone who was also a Black woman who really, I felt like, invested in me, took me to lunch, talked to me about my careers and my ambitions. And I was like, whoa, this is a thing. People do this. And it was like very eye-opening to me that there could be someone out there who really wants the best for me. And I would say that was very influential for me, so much so that I really think about that moment a lot and trying to provide that for other people. And so I've really dedicated my entire career to career development for other people, and just trying to show them that there is someone who's rooting for them, advocating for them, sharing strategies. Like that's all important to me.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna go back for a second when you said or you realized like no one's coming to save you, Adara.
Mm.
I say that a lot, especially for Black women, because I'm like, no one's coming to save us, right? Nobody is coming. Not a DEI initiative, not a protest, not a bias training. All those things are wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's up to us to take control of our environments and of our career and advocate for ourselves.
I definitely think that there is room though to recognize that there are people who want to support you. I do
Hmm.
feel very supported now. But that's because I've learned to nourish relationships and build that team of people around me. The personal board of directors is how it's often referenced. So I learned how to do that. I don't
Hmm.
think the right mindset is to think that you are completely on your own. That's not what I want to say. I think what I want to say is you are in charge and you should build a team and not wait for someone else to build your team. I think
Exactly.
that's really the important point. I have done very, very well because of other people helping me. And I
Hmm.
want to give them their credit because everything that I've received, it's through mentorship and support. I think the issue for me was that I was waiting for someone to open the door and say, you should apply for this. And in
Right.
fact, I have like tidied everything up for you. And all you have to do is, click a box, it's ready. Like that's not how it works for me. Maybe for other people, but for me, it was never like that. I've always been very engaged in the majority of opportunities that have come my way.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, we have to pick ourselves up and realize we do need help, right? Even if it's not necessarily being thrown at us, we may need to go out and seek it, right? So I totally agree with you on that. You mentioned that your mentor was another Black woman. Was that something important for you that she was culturally similar?
Say that one more time. You froze for a second. I want to make sure I hear
Oh,
you.
no. I was saying you mentioned that your first mentor was another Black woman.
Mm.
And I was asking, how was that something important for you at that time?
Um, so I actually, this comes up a lot because every once
Mhm.
in a while I'll meet someone who's of a particular racial ethnic background, and actually my instinct is to see if I can pair them with someone who is of similar struggle, or similar background, because they might have similar struggles because of that identity. Um, in my particular case, I think it was really validating to have someone who looked like me and was able to achieve the things I wanted to achieve, and who also told me that I was capable of doing that. I think the combination of those three aspects of the relationship were incredibly fundamental. Um, and so I think when I meet someone who's coming to me and they're like, I don't know if I fit in, I feel like an outsider. A lot of that is related to some form of personal identifier. Not everyone, I want to be clear, that's not everyone, but trying to find someone who has some form of concordance, some sort of overlap is
Mhm.
really helpful, especially for someone who's very early on in their career and they just want to know, they just want to hear, I belong, and I know I belong because I see you doing really well and you feel like you belong. I think that's very helpful to just sort of like cement our feeling of being welcomed or belonging. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
That being said, that can't be enough. That should not be enough. That ultimately can tax those individuals, because what happens a lot is if you are one of few faculty or executives or whatever leadership role you might have, a lot of people will come to you and just you, and that's really challenging. And so I definitely encourage people to create that like home base. And if that person is willing to be a home base for one particular aspect of your needs, wonderful. But remember that you need to build that personal board of directors, that table of people, and divide out those issues or concerns you have to people who are like specific experts in that area. So I have someone who is my personal finance guru, not a woman, not a mother, not black, and I go to them for this particular topic. I don't care what they look like. I just need someone to tell me, this is what you invest in, this is what you don't this is what you don't invest in. And I
Right.
have someone who I go to for parenting advice. And of course, they are a parent. That's very important to me, that they have experienced parenthood and so forth. I have someone who I go to for writing questions, how to be better at writing. And I want them to have experience with writing. But there's no one person who could satisfy all of those needs for me. And so, yes, I think the identity overlap between that first mentor was really crucial because it gave me this sense of belonging. But I think she has a lot of expertise in one field, but not everything that I'm seeking. And it's also just great to get different perspectives. So there's many reasons why you really want to expand your network.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. The diversity, right? Having people with different skill sets, different perspectives, different, you know, thoughts, ideas can really help you to advance in different areas. I love that
And
aspect
can I
of
just
it.
add one thing, is
Yeah, yeah.
that these people who are coming onto your team don't have to be senior to you. They can
Mhm.
be peers, near peers. They can be someone who is technically below you in rank or years of experience, but they're just really good at something. So you can have a whole spectrum of people who you turn to for certain issues. And I just want to add, because it's really important that you're not just taking, but you're
Mhm.
also providing support back to these people. You're nominating them for awards. You're sharing your network so that they have contacts now. You're amplifying them on social media, whatever it is, but you're seen as a giver as well. That's crucial to the nurturing of the relationship.
Yes, yes, yes. When you were talking earlier, you mentioned being one of few. And I would imagine you're one of few as, an assistant professor at Harvard. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and, kind of being a woman of color working in a predominantly white, seemingly based on the media, you know, biased environment?
I walked into an environment that was incredibly friendly and generous, and I did not feel like anyone was blatantly ever excluding me. So I had a really wonderful network. And I want to say that because even though that was in place, I still felt like I'm not exactly fitting the mold here.
Mm,
And there's just something that these really wonderful people can't fulfill or satisfy to make me not feel that. And so it
mm,
was it was just this like moment where I was like, wow, everyone here is actually quite nice and encouraging. And yet there was like this lack of connection. And it's probably just because I have a very different lived experience. And the way I see the workplace, is different than perhaps my peers. And I think most importantly, the way the workplace sees me is different than how it is for my peers. And so there was a gap, I think, as far as being able to connect with people, just because it's like there is something about connecting with someone who really understands the subtle ways of being excluded. And like, because it's very easy to gaslight yourself and to say, am I doubting, like, did that really happen? Am I making this up? And when you have someone who's like, nope, because it happens to me all the time with this exact same person, you're not making it up, it's just very subtle. Like, to not have that sort of safety net in your network locally, like within your institution or your department or your office or your team, can create this sense of like, well, who do I turn to? I actually, at one point in time, my chair is incredibly supportive. I have only positive things to say. And I went to my chair because I was feeling it so strongly, this gap. And I said, I need a senior Black woman physician mentor. Like, I need that. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to find you one. And literally, like, that day, he connected me via email to someone who was phenomenal. And that's really was like an important moment, right? Because he could have said, "Oh, I'll help you," or "You don't need that. Like, you're doing great," right? Like, it would have been very easy for me to be dismissed, and that wasn't the case. He put in the effort and the energy to build this wonderful connection with someone who I am like so inspired by. And I think that was really important, to like have a sense of safety with my supervisor, to tell them like, hey, everyone here is nice, but like, I need someone who really gets it to talk to. And to have that issue raised to him, and there was no sense of defensiveness. That's really important. And I know not everyone has that. And so for me, it's been really important to just be present in this institution and be a place where people can turn to and say, hey, you're in a different field, you're in a different department, you are faculty and I'm a student. Can I turn to you? That's basically why I took the current position I have, is because I really understand that gap.
Yeah, that's very powerful, and I love that your professor. I'm assuming, was he Caucasian?
Yeah, he
Okay,
is.
yeah, and there's tons of very nice, very supportive white leaders that will definitely uplift us and encourage us and things like that. Um, Even though a lot of times, sometimes it's
Well, I can say this,
yeah.
I speak to a lot of women at my
Hmm.
institution, other institutions, who are the same stage of their career, and many of them don't have that experience. And so I
Hmm.
want to speak to what happens when you don't have that experience, because I think maybe not the majority, but many fall
Right.
into the category of, my boss would never do that. So this is the advice I give that group of people. um a Social media has been instrumental. That's how you and I got connected, right? So
Yes.
I use social media not to post pictures of my avocado toast or my new nail polish, right? Like, I'm not making fun of people who do that, but that's not why I use it.
Hmm.
I use social media as an extension of my local network, and now I'm branching into a national or international network. And so I don't really post too much. If you look at any of my social media platforms, I might maybe post once a week, if that. Um, but I do a lot of direct messaging. Like, I direct message people all the time, people who are more senior than I am, or junior, or same level, whatever. And I just say, hi, I saw your post. I just wanted to say that I totally agree. I'm aligned with this work. If you ever want to talk or collaborate, I am here. Here's my contact information. And not everyone replies, but I'll at least start the conversation and recognize that some of these are going to turn into opportunities. Like me right here, I'm pretty sure I reached out to you and asked you to come onto your podcast, right? So I do a lot of self-advocacy that way. And that really goes back to the idea of like taking charge and pushing on my own, because like I said, no one is trying to save my career. And it's really important for me to recognize that. So I use social media a lot. The other thing is when I meet with someone, let's say let's say you and I meet, and at the end of the conversation, I often, maybe even always, ask, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? I like to call it the snowball effect, because I now trust you, Melanie, and I know you have a very curated list of people. Like, you're going to send me to good people. And instead of me having to do cold call emails and all those sorts of things, I can just now use that introduction and say, Melanie introduced, wants me to meet you, and she told me so many great things about you. And they're like, oh, okay, this is someone Melanie is recommending. I trust Melanie, right? And so it just is much easier for that to become a sticky relationship. And so I do that a lot, and that's how I've slowly built my network, is
Mm,
by social media, direct messaging. And then when I do meet with someone, I ask them who else they think I should meet with.
yeah, that's a very powerful strategy for sure. And I think it's important to be able to have those real, genuine, strong connections in terms of relationship building, because it helps you to spread your message or reach your goals, but then you're also helping other people as well, which is very, very powerful. So I love that. And I love that you reached out to me. I was like, oh, me? Yes. I would love to chat with you.
I'm so
So
honored to be here.
absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about your book and how you got to the point to where you decided I need to write this book. Was there something that happened? Was there epiphany you had? Was it a gradual journey? How did you get to this point of saying this
I'm
has to
going to
be
tell you the short-ish version, but I have to start from the beginning of my writing career. When I got into Berkeley, they accepted me with an asterisk. And the
done?
asterisk was, we will accept you, but you have to take this remediation English class. Like, you can't take the regular English class. You have to take this other one. And instead of being, 2 hours a class, it was like 3.5 hours. And we had to go to these workshops and we had to meet with the professor. It was like just a lot more intensity to it. And the message was really, you guys, need more support with your writing skills. Your ability is lower. And I really took that as, I'm not a writer. And
Mm,
actually, it was so strong that even though I was at UC Berkeley, when I finished the English 1A class, I felt so insecure about my writing that I actually registered for English 1B at the local community college. And this is no slight against community college, but I'm just saying I didn't feel comfortable taking the course with my peers at UC Berkeley because I just felt so discouraged by the prior class. And after that class, for years, I just decided I'm not a writer. I'm not going to write. It wasn't until really the murder of George Floyd where I got the bug. It just totally bit me. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I wrote this article because what was happening was, we were talking a lot, my colleagues and I were talking a lot about how we de-escalate patients all the time in the emergency room. Like, patients come in agitated for various reasons, or they become agitated for various reasons. And I've never killed anyone, and I've had to restrain people, sedate people, everything, because sometimes it's just, you have to do it for their safety, for everyone else's safety. But no one's ever died from, and under my watch. And I would say even in my department, I don't know of anyone who's ever gone to the point of killing someone, right? So, like, that's an extreme. What happened to George Floyd is a very unfortunate extreme event. And my colleagues and I, we felt so passionate about it. We were talking about it so much that we were like, we should get into this conversation that's happening at a national level. And we wrote our first article for USA Today about how police officers need better training on de-escalation. And it went mega viral, at least from like my first time writing something. It was like everywhere I looked, the article was somewhere. I was like, oh my God, I didn't expect that. I was so nervous. And
mm,
but it was a lot of positivity, like a lot of positive reception. And I thought, oh my God, this is crazy, because we wrote it on a Monday and it was out like Thursday or Friday. And I said, you can deliver a message that fast with writing.
mm.
And I just started writing more and more for these like lay audiences. And I got like a lot of positive feedback that, like, this really helped. This really spoke to me. And that reinforcement made me feel like I can help people this way. And so I started to write with many different writing partners, one of which is Dr. Risa E. Lewis, who's an amazing writer, amazing editor. And we started writing articles about the workplace, very like nuanced things that we felt like, if we were to do this, the workplace would be better. Like we have a meeting we should stop 7 a.m. meetings at work because that's not really inclusive of everyone. And it's not really a compassionate practice. And so we wrote an article about stopping 7 a.m. meetings. We wrote another article about being compassionate in the way we send emails. Like we shouldn't really be sending emails when someone's on vacation over the weekend at 3 a.m. But these like small little articles, people were like, oh my gosh, I'm taking this back to my team. And so at that point, we were like, let's do something bigger. Like, let's just keep escalating. And the book seemed like a natural next step.
Love that. It's the impact for me, always. Always the impact. And so when you were writing this book, how are you different now? Like after you've written a full book, right? An article is one thing, but like a whole book with probably chapters, sections, like how are you different?
That is such a great question. No one has asked me that. And we've had so many interviews. I think I'm a better writer. And one thing I would say is that writing, so back to this like message that I got when I was in college, writing is a skill set. It is not an intrinsic ability as I once thought. And I have learned that I can become better at writing. And I'm actually better at reading. I mean, I've known how to read for a long time, but I'm better at like more of an analytical approach to reading. And I would say I'm better at those two things because of the book. I'm also better, I think, at thinking about what my reader would find interesting and helpful. When I first started writing, it was always a little bit more self-centered, like what I want to write about. And there's some truth to that. Like you have to, as an author, feel passionate about something or interested in something at least, or invested to start. But when it comes to finishing it and delivering it, like you have to give them a package they're interested in reading. And I think I'm much better at thinking about, is this actually for me or for them? And like, how am I helping someone? My goal, it always boils down to like, I want my reader to be a different person coming out of an article or an essay than they were going into it. And so I'm always thinking like, what am I teaching them? What is the new insight? And I think I'm better at that.
Nice. So who is this book for specifically?
So the book is called Micro Skills, Small Actions, Big Impact. It's, initially we were writing this for early career professionals, people who were like just out of college, just out of graduate school, a few years into the workforce. And we have found people of all ages and stages loving the book. We just had an interview yesterday with someone who I think he said he was 57. And he's like, I learned so much from this book. And so, I think it's, for some people, it's like just a refresher of content. And then for others, it's just brand new ways of thinking about the workplace.
So I know you're very passionate about motherhood as well, right? So passionate about medicine, you're passionate about mentorship, and you're passionate about motherhood. So talk to us a little bit about how that all intersected. Did anything come up for you in terms of striking that balance and trying to be a good mom and trying to be a good doctor and trying to be, all the things? Talk a little bit about that.
They say you can't do it all. I think that's not true. You can do it all, but you can't do it all at once. And so I have been one of those folks where I'm like, I don't really believe in work-life balance, but I think it's important to just be aware, situational awareness of what is your current priority and what are you missing out on. I'll give an example of my big aha moment. I was invited to give this panel on work-life balance a few years ago. I think my youngest was like a year and my oldest was maybe around 2. I have 3 kids now, but at the time I only had 2. And the work-life balance panel, believe it or not, was like 6:00 or 7:00. It's like right in the middle of dinner and bedtime routine, all of that jazz. And I lived in a very tiny apartment at the time. And, there was no hiding Like I couldn't go hide somewhere. Like my kids knew I was there, right? And so I'm setting up for the panel, and my two little kids are trying to get into the room. And I'm in an old Boston apartment. There are no locks on the knobs. You can just barge into any room at any time. And they're coming into the room. They're coming into the room. So I'm not even lying when I tell you I had to close the door and slide a dresser against the door to keep my kids out. And then I open up my computer and I, turn on the Zoom, said I'm ready for the panel. The panel's going, and I'm hearing my kids the entire time banging on the door, "Mommy, we want mommy." At the same time, the panelist is like, "Dr. Landry, thank you for being here. We are hoping you can tell us about work-life balance." And I said, "What is going on? This is not work-life balance. My kids are crying on the other side. I'm on this panel. I'm barely paying attention, and I'm stressed out. I'm not here for anyone right now." And so that was the first moment where I started to say, I can't do it all at the same time. So I stopped having meetings from 6 to 9 p.m. because that's when my kids are home. I just say no. There are like a few exceptions a year, but for the most part, I say no, especially compared to before. So from 6 to 9, and I like to set it, we call it lots of boundaries, those sorts of things. I like the word parameters now. I'm using the word parameters because it feels more measurable to me, like it's a quantitative answer. And so my parameter is I don't have meetings from 6 to 9 p.m. And what I learned was that no one fired me. I didn't get called into my boss's office. I didn't lose out on my salary. I didn't lose any promotions. I didn't lose my network because opportunities just kept coming. And I would screen out the ones in the 6 to 9 window, and I would accept the few that were in the 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. window. And I was doing okay. And I was doing less also. And the things that I just were focused on were really aligned with me. I started to learn like what's a good opportunity for me. And because I saw no, negative recourse for doing this, I moved on to blocking out my weekends. So now on the weekend, it's rare that I'm doing like academic work. I might do like some like, personal essays because I find that therapeutic for myself, but I'm not doing like academic work, like going to conferences and those sorts of things. I have like totally tuned that down. And so that was it, like creating these boundaries so that I have designated time for my kids. And I'm not so much worried about the balance, the yo-yoing between the two things when they're home.
I love that so much. I love that so much because I'm the same way. 3:30, I gotta go get my kids, and that's it. They done. My day is finished, right? Because what I used to notice for myself, I would be like trying to do both at the same time, and I'm like I was a resume writer for a long time, trying to write resume, and the kids are just there, and I'm like, and I'm not being a good mom because now I'm fussing and yelling because I'm like, just go here,
Exactly.
just do this, because I'm so stressed out trying to do both, and I just realized very quickly I cannot do both, like you said. And it was either I'm working right now or I'm being a mom. Can I intertwine, try to intermingle? It just does not work.
Especially not when they're really young. I think
Yeah,
as you get older, maybe a little bit easier, but right now my kids are, 7 and below. There's just no way.
yeah. My kids might have twins that are 6,
Yeah, no
and then
way.
I have an 11-year-old. There, it's it's a no go. But I love that you found your balance, right? And it's so ironic how how that played out when you were actually in the meeting and they were there, and it was, woo. That I know, I have a feeling how you felt.
You can't make this stuff up. I was like, this is hilarious that it's a work-life balance meeting.
Right. That's wild. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so I would love to know if there's anything that you wanted to say to the audience, primarily the listeners are, women of color looking to build a personal brand, looking to really, build their visibility and accomplish great things and make an impact. And I feel like you have definitely done all of those things. So what would you say if there was one thing you want them to make sure that they focus on or prioritize? What would you say to that?
I have so many, but I'm only going to pick
Okay.
one.
Well, you could do
You can
two.
read the
You could
book
do
for
two.
more, but the biggest one that I think can make a difference today is to pause before you accept an opportunity. If
Mm,
something comes your way, avoid the impulsive, reflexive yes, and instead Ask questions. Ask them, tell me about the opportunity. When does it start? When do you want it by? Is there funding? How are you going to promote this? Will this be published? Am I going to be able to use this for promotion? If so, how? I mean, those sorts of questions, right? And of course, you're not drilling them or grilling them in a way that's going to seem like uncomfortable for either of you, but you're just asking these questions in a natural way within the conversation. And you're going to find out eventually. And it's way better to find out before you say yes or no. So you're just pre-screening. And the way I usually frame it is just like, this sounds really interesting. Just so I make sure that I'm the best person for you and this is the best project for me. Is it okay if I ask you a couple questions? If they say no, ooh, red flag.
Right.
Red flag. Right? But most people are going to say yes, of course, right? Because most people are reasonable. And so you ask a couple questions. You say, so thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to think about it for, 48 hours. And what you're going to do in those 48 hours is go back to that personal board of directors we talked to you about. And you're going to take that information you learned and share with them and assess if this is really a good opportunity. Because sometimes people can see things in a positive way that you didn't recognize, like, oh, this is a huge benefit for you. You definitely want to say yes. Or they might say, no, I've done it. Trust me, you're going to hate it. I know you. I know the job. Or they might just give you further questions to probe about. So they say, maybe you should ask them instead of, getting a stipend for $1,000, I would go back and ask them for $2,000 because you're going to need more money. Whatever it is, like they can give you some background information that you might not have been considering on your own. And then you go
Love
back
that.
and you give your answer.
I want to add to that too, because in order to be able to recognize the opportunities that are in alignment, you would have to have that clarity first and kind of do that background foundational work in terms of your goals, your purpose, your mission, like who you want to reach and how you want to reach them and how you want to make that impact. Because then you can compare the opportunity to that path and see if there is alignment or if there's not. If you haven't done that work, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I'll do it because it's an opportunity to do something, right?
There's a balance here. You don't want to take too long. That's for sure. I actually, every once in a while, I do this with my kids. We walk into the ice cream store and I'm like, okay, go pick your flavor. And my daughter will pick the first one she sees. And I
Mhm.
say, I'm going to give you a minute or two. And I want you to think about these flavors and see which one you want, because I know what happens. I'm going to get this strawberry and then my other daughter's going to want chocolate. And then now you're going to want chocolate. So I want you to think
Mhm.
about it. So it's fun to kind of teach people to do this early on. It's really fun. I mean, but there is a balance. Like you don't want to overanalyze everything. You don't want to
Right.
delay so much that it seems like you're not interested and you're not the right person or you're not reliable. So there's a balance here, but I definitely feel like many of us, myself included, were taught this. I'm going to use the word toxic because I think in retrospect now it is toxic phrase, say yes to everything. I was taught that, like, really. Were you ever taught that, Melanie? Say yes to everything. Have you ever heard that before?
I don't think I was taught it, but I think I adopted it somehow because
I was explicitly, maybe it's like a medicine thing. I was explicitly told, say yes to everything because you never know what's going to be that good opportunity for you. You never know what you're passing up on. You never know what's going to be like your one big break, right? And that's the logic behind the say yes to everything mantra. And I just feel like that has made us feel like we can't say no. That no is really uncomfortable. But you don't always have to say no. You can say, this is a really great opportunity, but I think the best person for this is X. I recommend you try that person. Or this is really great, but my schedule is just not awesome right now. If you can wait 8 months,
Mm,
come back to me. I can do it then. There's alternatives to just saying no. And so I think it's just important to recognize that.
awesome. What else? You say you have many things. What other gems do you want to drop before we
Oh,
wrap up?
I mean, definitely building your network. We talked about already, so I won't belabor it, but I just want to really emphasize that the most successful people I know are the most connected people I know. They just
Mhm.
have these really amazing networks that can pull things in for them that would be really hard to do on your own. So I would say, nurture your network, make sure you're giving back to people. That's really important. I think There's so many. So I can go through some of the chapters and talk about why we include these chapters. So we have our opening chapter is on self-care. And we sort of scaffold the book into three different tiers: the self, the team, and the work. And we think it's really important at the most fundamental level to take care of yourself. That's why it's chapter 1 in our book. And so we talk about self-care as in nourishing your relationships. We talk about self-care as in your physical health, going to see a doctor. Oh boy, as physicians, we see people who have unexpected, disastrous news. We deliver that to them, and they thought that they had a lot more time.
Mm,
And, I just can't emphasize the importance of screening exams, mammograms, colonoscopies, because you don't want to wait too long and then, have a devastating diagnosis, right? So we talk a lot about taking care of yourself, calling in sick when you're sick so that you can rest and that you
mm,
can model to other people that I don't have to self-sacrifice to keep my job. And the modeling of that is really important. We talk a lot about managing your task list. That's our next chapter, managing your task list, because a lot of us have different priorities or different tasks, and we might not know how to prioritize them. I have a story in the book. We have a lot of personal stories in the book, but I have one story about this idea of understanding what your supervisors expect of you. And it was based on this what like webinar, not webinar, it was in person, but like a seminar. That's the word I'm thinking about. It was a seminar, and the speaker was talking about how he and his co-fellow, a woman, they were both assigned a task to host these like journal club lunch hours. And the
mm,
woman went all out and had like beautiful invitations and ordered all this special food and, personally invited every single speaker. And the man did like very simple emails that were sent to everyone at once and just ordered like pizza and water for the lunch. And in the end, he got the job, she didn't. And he talked
mm,
about it was because he really understood what mattered to his supervisor. The type of lunch didn't matter, the color of the invitations didn't matter. He knew that all the supervisor wanted him to do was write, publish, speak. You know what I mean? He understood the priorities of the supervisor. So we talk a lot about that as well.
mm,
We talk about communication. We write about communication, about how important it is to understand body language, your own body language. Like what do you do when you're upset? And does that convey the message you want to convey?
mm,
We talk a lot about understanding how your engagement is perceived, right? Like if you're on your phone all day at work or your video's off, do people still consider you engaged? And if they don't consider you engaged, does that matter to you? Because maybe you don't care. And there, I mean, we're only up to chapter 2 or 3, but there's 10 chapters, so you can see how we talk a lot about just navigating the workplace, understanding that it's not just you, it's you plus the team plus the actual work you have to do.
right.
And they all sort of interact with each other. And you can't really just think only about yourself and you're going to just do what's good for just you, because for most people that won't be sufficient.
Mm, wow. Sounds like a lot of valuable information in this book, baby. I love it. So listen, folks, if you want to get in on some of this goodness, order the book. Is it out? It's not out. Is it
They
released
can
yet?
order it now. It comes out in 1 week. Actually, if
Okay.
I don't know if anyone's in New York City, we are going to have our launch event. Can I just pitch it really
Oh,
fast?
yeah, yeah.
Our launch event is going to be actually at the New York Public Library, the main branch in Bryant Park, on the 17th at 6 p.m. We're going to be in conversation with Jill Schlesinger. She's like a amazing Emmy Award winning CBS business analyst who's going to talk to us about the book.
Wow, phenomenal. Oh my goodness. I am so honored and grateful that you decided to be a guest on my podcast. You're doing such wonderful things at such a high level. I appreciate you for spending the time with us today. Folks, if you're interested to order Dr. Landry's book, I'm going to drop it in the comment section in the show notes. So definitely check it out. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Listen, if you're looking to build your personal brand, you definitely need to check out the Empowered Presence program. It shares the name of the podcast, but it's designed for brilliant women of color looking to build their visibility, their authenticity, their authority, and thought leadership without sacrificing authenticity. So if you want to learn more about that, I'll also be having that link available as well. In the meantime, catch us next time and happy self marketing.